The email arrived at 7:12 on a rainy Monday morning. Subject: Congratulations. I smiled. After nearly 9 years at Orion Technologies, I had finally been promoted to Director of Product Development. My parents were thrilled. My friends celebrated. LinkedIn exploded with congratulatory messages. For a few hours, I felt exactly the way I had imagined success would feel. Then I walked into my new office. It was twice the size of my old one. There was a polished conference table, a window overlooking the campus. My name was already engraved on the door. I stood there alone. Instead of excitement, I felt something else. Responsibility. Because behind every promotion is a silent question. Who do you need to become now? By noon, I had my answer. It wasn't encouraging. My calendar was already full for the next 3 weeks. Budget reviews, hiring decisions, customer escalations, board presentations, product strategy, performance reviews. 183 people now reported to me, directly or indirectly. I stared at the organizational chart. Then I realized something uncomfortable. I couldn't possibly solve everyone's problems anymore. For years, success had come from being the smartest engineer in the room. Now that strategy would fail. Completely. That evening, I called David. He had been retired for almost a year. I think they've promoted the wrong person. He laughed. I wondered how long it would take before you called. I'm serious. I know. I'm responsible for too many people. So stop trying to carry them. I don't understand. Maya, leadership isn't carrying people. It's helping them carry themselves. The next morning, I arrived at work before sunrise. Instead of opening my laptop, I walked through the nearly empty building. The lights were dim. Coffee machines hummed quietly. I stopped in front of the wall where photographs of previous company presidents were displayed. Something struck me. I recognized only 2 names. Yet every one of those leaders had once occupied offices like mine. Titles disappear. Influence doesn't. That thought stayed with me all day. 2 weeks later, our executive team gathered for our annual strategic planning retreat. The CEO, Michael, opened with one question. What business will we be in 5 years from now? The room became silent. One executive started talking about market share. Another discussed competitors. Someone else reviewed last quarter's numbers. Michael listened patiently. Then he shook his head. You're answering today's questions. I asked about tomorrow. That meeting changed the way I thought forever. Driving home that evening, I realized I had spent most of my career solving immediate problems. Deadlines, budgets, customer issues. Those things mattered. But leaders who spend all their time solving today's problems eventually become prisoners of today's success. The future belongs to people who notice tomorrow before everyone else does. That was the first pillar. Strategic thinking. I began protecting time on my calendar. Every Friday morning, no meetings, no email, no phone, just thinking. At first, I felt guilty. Everyone else looked busy. I was sitting with a notebook. Then patterns began to emerge. Customer expectations were changing. AI research was accelerating. Young employees wanted flexibility more than hierarchy. Competitors were moving into markets we hadn't even considered. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to change. I was beginning to anticipate it. One Friday, I wrote a sentence in my notebook. Great leaders spend less time predicting the future than preparing for multiple futures. That became my definition of strategic thinking. Not predicting, preparing. A few months later, we launched one of the company's largest software initiatives. The strategy was brilliant. The presentations were beautiful. Everyone agreed. 6 months later, we were behind schedule. Over budget, morale was falling. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a wall covered with sticky notes. Hundreds of tasks, hundreds of conversations, hundreds of excuses. Everyone was working hard. Nothing important was moving. I finally understood something. Ideas don't create results. Execution does. The next Monday, I introduced something new. Every project would answer 4 questions. What are we building? Why does it matter? Who owns it? How will we measure success? Then we added one simple rule. Every Friday, we would improve something. No exceptions. The team jokingly called it Maya's Friday Habit. Years later, people gave it a more impressive name. The execution flywheel. Plan, prioritize, execute, improve, repeat, not glamorous, not revolutionary, just relentless. Within 6 months, our projects were consistently finishing ahead of schedule. People assumed I had become a better strategist. That wasn't entirely true. We had simply become better at executing ordinary things extraordinarily well. I wrote another sentence in the notebook. Discipline compounds faster than inspiration. Then came the lesson I never expected. It arrived in the form of an employee named Carlos. Carlos was brilliant, creative, fearless. He challenged every assumption I made. At first, he drove me crazy. Every meeting became a debate. Every decision became a discussion. One evening, I complained to Michael. I wish Carlos would just trust my decisions. Michael smiled. Does he trust you? I think so. No. I mean, does he believe you're trying to make him successful? That question stayed with me all weekend. Monday morning, I invited Carlos to breakfast. Instead of discussing work, I asked about his goals, his family, his ambitions, his frustrations. For 2 hours, I simply listened. Near the end of breakfast, he looked at me and said something that surprised us both. This is the first time I feel like someone wants me to succeed more than they want to be right. That sentence changed my leadership forever. People often think leadership is about gaining followers. I discovered the opposite. Leadership is about creating leaders. The more capable my team became, the less important I needed to be. Instead of solving every problem, I began asking better questions. What do you think? What options have you considered? What would success look like? At first, people were frustrated. They wanted answers. Eventually, they discovered something better: confidence. The organization changed. Meetings became conversations. Managers became coaches. Mistakes became learning opportunities. Innovation accelerated because people stopped fearing failure. One afternoon, walking through the engineering floor, I overheard 2 young managers talking. What would Maya ask? I smiled quietly. Not because they were copying me, because they were thinking for themselves. It was around that time that I finally saw the pattern. Everything I had learned about leadership fit together naturally. It wasn't 3 separate skills. It was one complete system. At the top, strategic thinking, seeing around corners, recognizing opportunities, preparing for futures others couldn't yet see. In the middle, execution excellence, turning vision into results, creating accountability, building systems that consistently delivered. At the foundation, followership generation, building trust, developing people, creating leaders who multiplied leadership. I sketched a pyramid in my notebook. 3 levels, 1 purpose. I circled it and wrote 4 letters beside it. STEF, trademark. Strategic thinking, execution excellence, followership generation. It wasn't just a framework. It was the story of my own transformation. Years later, a young vice president asked me what had made the biggest difference in my career. He expected me to mention a degree, a mentor, artificial intelligence, perhaps even luck. Instead, I told him this. The day I stopped trying to become the smartest person in the room and started trying to build the smartest room. He looked puzzled. I smiled. Leadership isn't measured by how many people depend on you. It's measured by how many people no longer need to. Looking back now, I rarely remember the products we launched. Markets changed, technologies evolved, Companies reorganized. What remained were the people. The intern who became a vice president, the shy engineer who learned to lead global teams, Carlos, who eventually became our chief technology officer. Those were the real results. Not quarterly earnings, not promotions. People. That was the moment I truly understood the purpose of leadership. Success is what you accomplish. Leadership is what continues because you were there. And somewhere between the engineer I had been and the leader I was becoming, I realized the greatest achievement of my career would never appear on my resume. It would live quietly, inside the stories other people someday told about their own. The email arrived on a Thursday morning. Unlike every promotion I had ever received, this one wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to everyone. Subject: Orion's AI Transformation Initiative. I opened it without much thought. By the time I finished reading, my coffee had gone cold. The company was making the largest investment in artificial intelligence in its history. Every product, every department, every workflow, every employee, nothing would remain untouched. The final sentence lingered on my screen. Some roles will change significantly as AI capabilities expand. Change significantly. Corporate language has an interesting way of softening difficult truths. Everyone in the building understood what it really meant. Some jobs would disappear, others would be reinvented. The question wasn't whether AI was coming. It already had. The question was who we would become because of it. That afternoon, I walked through the engineering floor. Normally, the office buzzed with conversations. Today, it was strangely quiet. Clusters of employees whispered near coffee machines. Computer screens displayed articles with headlines that swung wildly between optimism and panic. AI will replace millions of jobs. The end of software engineering? The most important technology since the internet. Fear travels faster than facts. I had seen this before. Not with AI. With every major disruption. Cloud computing. Mobile technology. Automation. The technology changed. Human emotions did not. My leadership team gathered that afternoon. No one wanted to discuss quarterly targets. Instead, the room filled with questions. Will we need fewer engineers? Should we stop hiring? What happens to junior employees? Can AI write code better than we can? Then Ethan, now one of our senior engineering managers, asked the question everyone else was thinking. Maya, are we training the technology that's going to replace us? Silence. Every face turned toward me. I wished I had a simple answer. I didn't. Instead, I remembered something David had once said. The quality of your future depends on the quality of your questions. So I asked one instead. What if we're asking the wrong question? People looked confused. I walked to the whiteboard. On one side, I wrote, "Will AI replace us?" Then I crossed it out. Underneath, I wrote a different question. How can AI make us better? The atmosphere changed immediately. Not because anyone suddenly had answers, because the conversation had shifted from fear to possibility. Over the next several weeks, we ran an experiment. Instead of protecting people from AI, we immersed them in it. Every engineer received access to the newest AI development tools. Every product manager learned prompt engineering. Every designer experimented with generative design. Every executive committed to using AI in daily work. There was one rule. No one was allowed to judge the technology before spending at least 50 hours working alongside it. Curiosity before criticism. The first month was messy. Some people loved it. Others hated it. AI produced brilliant ideas one moment and complete nonsense the next. One afternoon, Carlos burst into my office laughing. You have to see this. He showed me code an AI assistant had generated. Half of it was elegant. The other half would have crashed the entire system. So, he asked, is this genius or stupidity? I smiled. It's an intern. He laughed. What? It works incredibly fast. It learns constantly. It occasionally does something spectacular. And sometimes, it has absolutely no idea what it's talking about. We both laughed. That became our unofficial description of AI for months afterward. Gradually, the team began to understand something profound. AI wasn't replacing expertise. It was changing where expertise mattered. Writing code became easier. Knowing what to build became more valuable. Creating reports became faster. Knowing which questions to ask became critical. Research accelerated dramatically. Judgment became the scarce resource. The work wasn't disappearing. The work was moving upward. One Friday afternoon, I visited Sophia. She had been one of our youngest engineers when I first met her. Now she led an innovation team. Her office walls were covered with sketches, prototypes, and AI-generated concepts. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous habit." She smiled. "I don't think AI is taking our jobs." "No? I think it's taking our tasks." I looked at the whiteboard behind her. She continued. "If AI handles repetitive work, then humans get to spend more time doing work only humans can do." That sentence stayed with me. Tasks change, purpose doesn't. As months passed, I noticed something fascinating. The people who struggled most weren't necessarily the least technical. They were the people whose identities depended on being experts. Every suggestion from AI felt like a threat. Every new capability felt like competition. The people who adapted fastest weren't always the smartest either. They were the most curious. They approached AI the same way children approach playgrounds. What happens if I try this? What else can it do? I wonder if curiosity proved far more valuable than certainty. Once again, the greatest advantage wasn't intelligence. It was learning. Late one evening, after most of the office had gone home, I found Ethan still working. His screen displayed dozens of AI-generated solutions beside his own designs. I can't decide which one is better. I pulled up a chair. We reviewed them together. Finally, I asked him a question. "Which one would you trust if someone's life depended on it?" He pointed to his own design. "Why?" "Because I understand every decision behind it." I nodded. Exactly. Artificial intelligence could generate possibilities. Human intelligence remained responsible for consequences. That distinction would become one of the defining principles of our organization. Machines could recommend. Humans remained accountable. Around that time, I began giving talks to universities. Students always asked the same question. Should I be worried about AI? My answer surprised them. No. They looked confused. I continued. You should be worried about becoming someone who refuses to learn AI. Technology has never been the enemy. Stagnation is. Every generation inherits tools its parents never imagined. The winners aren't the people who resist those tools. They're the people who master them while becoming even more human. One evening, while reviewing my notebook, I noticed something remarkable. Every major turning point in my career followed the same pattern. A challenge arrived. Fear appeared. Curiosity followed. Learning began. Transformation happened. The pattern hadn't changed. Only the technology had. I smiled and wrote another page. Human times AI. Not human versus AI. Not human or AI. Human multiplied by AI. That little multiplication symbol mattered enormously. Addition creates incremental improvement. Multiplication creates exponential possibility. If AI doubled my productivity, and I doubled my judgment, the result wasn't twice as good. It was transformational. Several years later, one of our products received international recognition for innovation. During the celebration dinner, a journalist asked me, "What's the secret to your company's AI success?" I thought about algorithms, infrastructure, investment, talent. Then I shook my head. It wasn't the technology. What was it? We taught people that AI wasn't here to replace their humanity. It was here to amplify it. Looking back now, I realize AI gave me one final leadership lesson. For decades, I had believed my greatest responsibility was helping people adapt to change. I was wrong. My greatest responsibility was helping them believe they could. Technology changes every generation. Human potential doesn't. The future never belongs to those who cling to yesterday. It belongs to those willing to become beginners. One more time. As I closed my notebook that evening, I smiled. Another learning cycle had begun. And somewhere beyond the horizon, I knew another version of Maya was waiting to be discovered.